Welcome to my basement, everybody! The producer's giggling in the background. Which producer is my mom? Hi, Mom.
Yeah, your mom is awesome with a soundboard.
She is incredible, right?
She has all these talents.
Hey, Mom, dust my action figures, would you?
Yeah, Mom. Chop.
While you're up.
And bring me peanut butter sandwich.
Yeah, but Scott, my friend here, needs a peanut butter sandwich with the crusts off, please.
And refresh my lemonade. So listen, here we are down in the basement.
We are the dick kids right there, right? We're the kids that everybody hates when they invite them over to their place.
Mom, we're playing Rock Band. Come down, we need a drummer. No, listen, we got back from Los Angeles, California. We had a wonderful trip there. Let me ask you something, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
What are you playing?
I jumped onto...
I think you're playing a game called Dad.
Yeah, I did have a dad day yesterday. I
tell
sure
me all
did.
about it, Mr. Mom.
Well, it was just cool. That was honestly, nobody wants to hear my dad stories. But that was the first day.
If they're good, I'll listen to them.
That was the first day I spent with my daughter. With my wife had to do some work, so she was totally out of the picture for the whole day. So it was my first all day with the baby day.
It's about time.
That was a big deal.
Let me ask you a question. Did you see any poop?
I always see poop every day, and I get scared if I don't. That's what happens.
Yeah, and it wasn't your own poop.
It wasn't my own
someone
poop.
else's poop.
No. But what have I been playing? I've been playing some stuff that's coming up on the show pretty quickly here. Knit Underground, Fire Emblem. I love Fire Emblem. It's a great franchise. What are you thinking about it? Do you like it?
You know, I'm not the biggest RPG guy in the world, but I found this one to be especially accessible, even to outsiders like myself.
Well, that's the thing with these turn-based strategy RPGs that these guys make, the intelligent systems people. They make them super easy to get into, and you can never pry them out of your cold, dead hands because they suck your life away. They're so addictive.
Let me ask you another question.
Ask me. Go ahead.
You know, it's funny that we're talking about Fire Emblem because Intelligent Systems, obviously they made the Advance Wars series, and I'm actually reviewing one of those as a buried treasure on the show.
Advance Wars is better than Fire Emblem, yeah.
Oh, fuck, I love Advance Wars so much. I used to...
They have tanks in Advance
When I lived
Wars.
in New York, I used to date this girl who lived a couple hours north of the city.
Was there poop?
My girlfriend with quotation marks around it, right?
Okay.
No, she actually lived a couple hours north, so I'd take a bus and I would play Advance Wars on the bus every time, and I never wanted that bus ride to end. I just fucking love that game so much.
That's how you get the ladies, by the way.
They see Advance Wars in your bag, and they're.
You tell them Advance Wars
That's
stories.
marriage material. Yeah. So let's talk about Vigil Watch 2013. Has anyone bought this company yet?
Crytek, I think, the rumor is that they're having them help them on new games. But, you know, it's kind of a sad thing that Darksiders is going to fade.
That sucks.
But, fuck, man, this business is crazy. It's insane. And, of course, the Junction Point is down. Warren Spector was on the show
the fuck?
4 weeks ago and something, and he's out of a job. On his LinkedIn profile, I saw unemployed. I'm looking for things. Got any ideas?
Maybe he could sweep the basement.
Maybe he
could
could
pick up
come
our
by
banana
here.
peels.
Yeah, maybe we make him a co-host. He asks questions.
Maybe he could be an unlockable character in the next Mario Kart. You know, Warren Spector should never be out of work in this business, but I have to say, Epic Mickey 2 sucked.
It was disappointing.
It was awful.
Broke our hearts.
And Warren, I know you don't give a shit about anyone's opinion. That was one of the points he made on the show.
Yeah.
It was awful.
It was bad, and honestly,
$60 on that game.
We're in a game universe right now, game industry universe, where you get one shot at things, maybe two if you're lucky, and then that's it. They got to sell bucket loads. Which brings us back to business time, but I'm not going to do an hour of business time.
No one wants your business
I did
talk.
that last week.
It was really boring. It just kept going, and I'm just looking at your mouth move, and I just kept waiting for it to end.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, what?
There was a knock, man.
Oh, it's Lorne Lanning.
Oh, my God. Lorne.
Hey, guys. What's
How did you find us, man?
Dungeon. I don't know, man. It looks like I got a ticket to the, S&M convention down here?
Yeah, we were there. We were there.
Our table was there. Yeah. That's right.
We were showing off our wares.
You need something trussed up, we can take care of it.
Lorne Lanning, it is an honor to have you here in the basement, and thank you for braving the smells and Scott's fart joke humor. That's really, really kind of you.
We will accept as payment one hustler, so if you have brought your hustler, I will accept it now.
That was the Hustler reference for the show right there.
We have to get one in. Shout out. That's true. Sorry.
Mold and I go way back, so this is actually comfort zone.
How are you doing, man? It's been a long time since you and I have talked.
It has been. We've been doing really great. I can't complain. On various levels, we tried a number of different things. Some of them actually, went into true efforts, and some of them failed. And then, but the great thing is Oddworld's been doing great.
It really has. It's been so damn cool to see, Stranger's Wrath on a bunch of platforms, and to see the reemergence of Abe, and and it kind of fits. I was going to talk about this a little bit. It kind of fits with this sort of move to 3D/2D design. All of this left to right scrolling stuff that we keep seeing in tons of games. You were doing this, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, a long time ago.
Well, yeah. Well, I was doing it after it was cool,
yes.
Right? meaning, we were sort of going back to uncool, as everyone was thinking, jumping into 3D was cool. And at that time, it was funny because we actually, we raised the money having 3D expertise.
That's true, right?
So we were like, yeah, games are going to go 3D, man. And we got 3D expertise, so we're going to do great. And then we made a 2.5D game, but hey, whatever it takes to get it, as long as you ultimately deliver, right? In terms of, financing, money, and all that stuff. But, it's funny. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, right? So technical and audience reasons why the simple 2D format came back, right? And the most obvious reason is just the mobile platforms.
Yeah, for sure.
The iOS and the tablets and touchscreens, and then you don't have, your double analog controller anymore. So things have to get simpler, and you're also dealing with a much wider possible audience, right? Like Rovio just absolutely nailed.
Yeah, totally.
And so what's interesting about that is there's something that I always sort of felt about games, which was I always felt the new bells and whistles were interesting, and as a geek, I'm kind of interested in them along with the next geek. But I never thought that should be at the expense, or it never really occurred to me that would be at the expense of increasingly great games of nostalgic styles.
Yeah.
And for a while there, I mean, at the beginning of the 3D generation, PlayStation and at that time, the PS1 time, people, if it wasn't 3D, there was kind of a stain on it, a taint on it. And what's great about what's happening with this widening base and different devices and wider range of people using games is that judgment is kind of, it's more to the sidelines now. I mean, it still matters with AAA frontline, console content and all that. And people still appreciate great graphics. But really, it was a return to what's really fun, what's really engaging, what works in the time formats that people have available to them in their, the disposable time in their lives. And with that, we see a lot of different reemergences. It's funny because I don't remember where I was yesterday, but I saw some Tim Schafer's old games for sale, and I guess maybe that was on the Apple Store.
Yeah,
Treasure, Monkey Island and stuff. I'm like, how great, and those are great for these new formats. And they never, without the digital distribution reality that we're dealing with now, and it's still, in my opinion, still in its infancy, right? In a good way.
Yeah.
And because of that, these products can find an audience without filling the limited retail shelf space, right? So that digital shelf space is kind of infinite. As long as you know what you're looking for, you can kind of find it out there. And that's what's awesome, because all the Oddworld games now, we have, crossing something like 17 languages on, over a dozen networks out there. And, individual networks themselves are in different territories. And so it's really fascinating to see, and it's fascinating to see what happens when new audiences get turned on to content that they weren't necessarily seeing before.
Yeah, one of the things that we really like about this, and Scott and I talk about this on the show quite a bit, is the idea that games don't disappear like they used to. It's not like they stay with us, and they're an art form that's sort of being curated and also honored, I think, with reissues and remakes and the ability to download the classics and stuff. And I just don't think that the medium was able to do that. And I think when you guys were initially bringing back this kind of 2D game design, everybody was just so hot for the new, and there just wasn't that idea of honoring the past, and everybody just wanted what was new and what was the new shiny thing and playing around in 3D. But it does feel like so many people have grown up with games. Like when you guys were starting to do the 2D thing as a kind of a retro throwback with your 3D and character stuff, there were kids that were coming up that were just being born to a world that they never knew without video games. So it's kind of cool that there is this global and eternal celebration around video games now. And you're right, it is just beginning.
I completely agree, and it's getting more like music, right? And it wasn't for the longest time, and I actually admit to misjudging that. Like, I thought it would be more like music earlier,
right?
And I think where I misjudged that was really in the complications and the expenses of getting consoles out there. And everything that the latter implies, the terms, the licensing narrowness, all of those things, not as a critic, but just as how do they recoup those billions of dollars? And that drives a certain perspective and attitude historically, right? But music, I remember growing up and my mother was still listening to stuff from when she was a kid. So it was like doo-wop was still playing. She had 45s of still. Like, the idea of the content never changed because CDs became available. You just got to hear great stuff with more clarity and maybe more ease, and you didn't have to, fast forward for 15 seconds and pay attention to reach the next song, And games are they're just getting much more accessible that way. I mean, just yesterday I saw a Business Insider report that showed how are people using these iOS devices and tablets, and 46% of the time consumed is on games on smartphones and devices. Yeah. And you're like, wow, what a flip from the day when when BlackBerry ruled the space. Yeah.
And BlackBerry just announced their new stuff, and games were a tiny little part of their story. It should have been a much bigger deal.
So it's catch-up time, right? If you're in that if you're under that brand, I don't know how they do it.
Lorne, you are one of gaming's most tenacious, most enduring figures. I remember thinking back to the launch of the original Xbox, and your face was everywhere. Everybody wanted to talk to you. And then you kind of went underground, and then Stranger's Wrath came out, and then you kind of went back underground again. And I kind of think of you as like the Clint Eastwood character in the Man with No Name trilogy. Like, you're out in the desert, you're still, fighting bandits, and you're still, I feel like you never have gone away. You continue to endure. You're one of gaming's most important icons. And, we see so many developers. We see so many, developers who've been around for so long. A lot of them are, some are going away now. Some people are having trouble. How have you endured? How have you managed to continue to do something that you love for so long?
It's like, God, I wish everything you said was just so true, But I think half of it is like, how did you manage to just not completely fail? You know what I mean?
That's another way of putting it.
Yeah. And, it's really interesting, to me. It's funny because I just did an interview out of Australia where they were asking a lot of questions, around challenging larger parties, larger brands, being boisterous, things like that. And part of it, I think, is, I just never really grew up. You know what I mean? So it's because there's still kind of this eternal flame of wise ass that's yet to be extinguished by having like real life responsibilities like kids. You know what I mean? So there's kind of this element of maybe handicap, maybe advantage. I'm not quite sure yet, and the party's not fully over yet, right? So we'll know at the end of the day. But I think in general, really, we're looking at things where I never got into the medium because I thought it was a quick buck or I thought it was a great business play. I mean, those elements that are kind of inescapable. But I really got into it for the possibility. And I looked at the gaming medium and I said, wow, like if you go back and you look at what the peep shows were in Chicago on the piers before motion pictures were invented, you just watch the train go by for a nickel, right? Yeah. And that's that's the origins of peep shows. And then you keep on looking, and I had come out of computer graphics. So and my partner, Sherry, who was Oddworld co-founder, Sherry was really a executive producing sort of pioneer legend in computer graphics in the 80s, right? And so she was, doing so many cool things back then that blew my mind before I even knew her. And those companies, and that enabled me to see, Digital Productions, Robert Abel Associates. In the beginning, there was PDI, Pixar was still selling medical software, like it was, and that's true, and I saw the medium of computer graphics. And when I saw computer graphics, I was like, wow, that's it. It's going to be enormous. It's going to affect everything. And, it led me to California, it led me into aerospace, it led me into seeing the highest end of military simulator technology. I was flying around in that stuff in the 80s, right? And I was like, this is going to be the future Nintendo machine. And being in Hollywood, a lot of people didn't see that. But what I got to see at that time was I got to see the computer graphics go from everyone saying it's nothing to becoming the most successful film studio in world history, Pixar.
Yeah.
Right. And that's delivering motion pictures. So I've heard every argument about why CG wasn't going to become anything, why it would never replace models and miniatures, why it would never animate believable characters. I've heard them all, right, from the experts forever. And seeing that transition of that medium just made it sort of very clear to me. And I always had faith in it, right? Like as soon as I understood computer graphics, I just had faith that it was going to be this knockout medium of the future with so many more possibilities. And we were still just looking at its very early evolutionary stages. And with the game industry, I saw it in the same way. And at the time, there was just no doubt to me of how much mind share the human, the collective human psyche was putting into the interactive computer graphic medium of challenge, games. And so looking at it that way, I always had, maybe an unrealistic fantasy that it's a really powerful potential medium and that, maybe we could tell great stories with it. And what's the purpose of telling great stories? All of that is about shining more light on ourselves. Yeah. And I originally started in the art world. So I always had that perspective of like great art reflects back on us, not necessarily what we want to see, but maybe what we need to face. And if we can do that in a way, and I think back to the original Star Wars or, even Tolkien or something, if we can do that in a way where that reflection is just so engaging and timeless and resonates with us and maybe, gives us a little more nutrition for hope and possibility, then, that's what always excited me about the medium. And that's why I think it's harder to kind of ultimately get rid of me.
I hear in your voice after all these years, I still hear the playfulness and the optimism, and it's never gone away. And, do you ever feel like gaming's forgotten man sometimes?
No, only in my own house. But, I don't know. Because it's hard to read your own press. I mean, I never believed it when celebrities said that. I only believed it when we actually started getting press. And if you really care about what you do and what you're making, I can't imagine being an actor or a songwriter, where it's really a singer, or vocalist, where you're on the stage and you're really in front of the crowd.
Yeah, it's just you.
Really,
yeah.
God, I'm way too much of a wimp for that. It's way too fragile. Hate defeat. I don't know how you could face the rejection. But when you read things that, sometimes there's hostility, sometimes there's praise, but ultimately it can all be really distracting, And so I started trying to sort of evade the perceptions and just follow what I thought was the right breadcrumb trails. And when it came to the reason we went quiet after Munch was I felt like we underdelivered on what we were touting. Right. And however we got to that point, I personally really, really felt vulnerable that way. And when I do tout something, I always believe it. And that's just the truth of it, right? And I don't think I'm a good salesman because I don't know how to sell something I don't believe in. But if I do believe it, I think I can sell great. And there was a lot of, it was a turbulent time in the industry as well. Console transitions, publishers going in and out of business, budgets rising, production, developers and publishers not still maturing and how to manage all that. So there was a lot of friction, and we had that great moment in the spotlight, with the Xbox launch, and so we got a lot of visibility around it. And then ultimately, we just got our asses kicked by Halo, right?
Right.
Yeah, admit it when you're on the mat. You're like, oh, man, that hurt. Wow, that was a good shot, guys. That
is one of the things I've always loved about you, though, is whenever I've heard you talk about games and what your games can do, you always, I can see you just spinning these worlds with your words, as and it's all these things that you hope your game can do, and then maybe they do come up short or maybe they don't. But I like the fact that you overreach when you go for something.
Well, you created a universe with Oddworld, and I think that's the resonance. That's the work of your art, being able to weather all of these different challenges and changes in the game industry. You created something that people in the know, and now more people that had no idea, that weren't sort of educated around what this thing was, are finding it and discovering it, and they're recognizing the truth, the art that you guys created.
That element has come back in ways I just couldn't have projected. I couldn't have foreseen.
Yeah.
We've often, you guys, we've been talking for years, right? And over a decade, having conversations similar to this, you and I, Vic.
Yep.
And throughout that time, I had one, and Sherry in particular, the very narrow focus on content is king.
Yep.
And if you deliver something real, right? And I live in Berkeley, and in Berkeley is the home of Cliff Bar. I don't know if you know about Cliff Bar, but that's an amazing story of a guy who plays.
I know.
He's eating one
every day, man.
Yeah, I tell you, you need an Apple with those things, man. It's like you're trying to pass brick. Yeah, exactly. But the point is like, you look at it and you go, look, if people are going to be spending this much time and processing this stuff, eating it like it's food, then what are we really delivering? Is it more nutritious, or is it just potato chips? And I don't mean that in any highfalutin way, as much as an artist, I think that sense of must create with meaningful message is kind of inescapable, and then the real ultimate challenge is how do you figure that out in free market, so-called free market society, that's capitalistically profit driven on growth only.
Yeah.
And so even the Oddworld games brought in under retail close to $180 million, right, which is not anywhere near what they cost to build and market, right? But the growth was not the type of growth that like Epic was having, right? And after Gears of War and after Xbox needed more titles like that. Talk about timing and opportunity. That's like George Lucas's licensing moment was Epic being able to own their content and getting all that support from Microsoft. You can only do that, and we had that with Oddworld. You can only do that when you're right there with what they need at the moment they know they need it, or else you'll never have that opportunity. Mm-hmm. But all these things considered, when you're on that path where you're dealing with public companies that are paying for the product that need a 5x to 10x return, right? Then you're kind of in that factory farming model, right? It's not necessarily it's more of a monoculture danger of everything or nothing, rather than the model that we've been using with Oddworld, which is really sort of backing up, taking a look at it more like sharecroppers, where we say, okay, we're not just going to, everyone's not just going to be working for us as much as we're working together towards something, and we're all going to understand what this business growth is. And we're going to do it in a way where we don't have to have a 5 to 10x return or look like a loser. If we can do a 1.5x return, we're doing better than any other investment you can have right now. Well, that's not super high risk.
Which brings us to today, and all the stuff that we're talking about. These are developer-owned stories that are happening right now. There are so many digital platforms and different ways to get this content out. There is so much strength in the power of the developer that has never been possible before in this industry. Do you think that if you guys had come to market today with Oddworld, your story would be different?
Yeah, because the huge fate of the stars advantage and trick that we got in all this, that it's allowing us to have the success that we're allowing on the digital platform, is consider two things. One, this content was not created to optimize this platform as a sort of business monetization strategy.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, if you want to optimize these platforms, right, you look at Ngmoco, you look at, Tencent, you look at even Zynga, right? Like, it's a different format of how people are winning, or Rovio.
Yeah.
We were able to bring a library of AAA content and be able to start putting it onto these platforms at a pretty low cost, and with basically, retaining the lion's share. So the numbers could be lower in units, but the profits would be higher in revenue. So in being able to bring that brand visibility with basically tens of millions of dollars of buckets of content, and all those games included, you're at 40 plus million in development, right? So we were able to take that and the recognitions of the brand and then put that on the digital platform. And what made, I think, our story easier, and this is something we still have to get better at, is that we really didn't advertise or market. We more PR'd and guerrilla marketed.
Right.
So that wasn't possible before. I think companies that did that awesomely in the retail space were like BioWare. If you remember BioWare back in I remember the first DICE conference, they were talking about how they were nurturing their website and their audience, and they had 1 million built-in pre-sales on any new game because they had the audience sort of social model
on their
in
forums,
their website,
right?
In their forums already.
Yep.
And that was kind of an earlier example of that, and still doing it in retail. Whereas we got to carry that brand visibility and that the love that people did have for the product. And what Time did was kind of make it more unique, like almost like whiskey or good cheese or wine.
Yeah, totally.
You go, well, this was originally made well, but over time, you've got to see how it compared against all these other comparables. And then, time kind of reveals something more unique in that. Did it turn into vinegar, or did it turn into something really special? And I think where we were lucky and fortuitous is that I think a lot of people responded with, really special.
That's awesome. And
that, I don't know how, with the money that we have put into I refer to it as Oddworld 2.0, right? The money that we've put in, I don't know how we would have captured the success that we've been having on this level without that existing brand recognition, and without, and built-in recognition, without having nurtured that audience, and without, with no basic ad dollars. Like, I don't know how you would capture the same success.
So the story is playing out as it should play out. And you,
I'm hoping so.
And you're probably happier today as a game maker than you were when you were in the height of building all of these things in their original form, I would imagine. Are you? Or
Well, yeah, I mean, that was just miserable, right? I read these stories about, people I know and friends and stuff, and they go, oh, yeah, making games is great. I'm like, you're so full of shit. Pulling out our hair and, suffering, are you going to make payroll? I mean, you guys know, you've talked to everyone. You've been around the block long enough.
I own my own company. Yeah, people always come to me and ask about building TV shows or building anything, and it's like, well, it's one thing to build something, but it's also another thing to have a company and run the company. Those are two separate issues, and you've dealt with them for sure.
Yeah, they're like, the ongoing train wreck of your life, right? Like cars just keep on piling into one another, and they don't stop no matter how old you get, as long as you're still on the playing field. But with each of those train cars crashing, there's a lesson, right? And I think for myself, one of my biggest lessons was don't expect limelight, and don't be so vulnerable to what people say. And when you're in, I read something by Cliff Blazinski the other day, and he said, people were at, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And he said, well, there's something about that AAA front line, that's really hard to resist. Seeing your property up on Times Square, seeing, West Coast Choppers or whatever, Garage Shop, whatever, building your motorcycles with your brand on, that's cool. And it is cool. And it's very seductive, and it's very limited supply and it's very hard to come by, and it's kind of like once in a lifetime you can end up in that spot. And I know that spot, and that's a great spot. In that spot, if you don't capture it at that moment, it's like, oh man, it's the most devastating spot.
Right.
The defeat is just crushing because there's so many eyeballs on it. And then every individual weighs their defeats or success in different ways. I've walked away sometimes feeling like we completely lost, and half of my team is looking at me like I'm insane. They're joyous. And so the lessons, the more that we wreck, I ride motorcycles. I've ridden them all my life, and I'm still like commuting through Bay Area traffic for stress release. And there's something where I've crashed so many times. It's like every time I've crashed, and I started when I was a kid, I learned something really good. I've almost never made that same mistake twice, but there's always a new mistake to make. And they hurt. They really hurt. So you get a great story, and they're exciting. I
don't want to use that as our launching pad, but what is new? Yeah. I don't want it to be a new mistake, but what is coming from you? What can you tell us anything about that? Because we're celebrating your past, but what's coming up?
Well, we got there's two prongs to that. On one side of that fork is what Oddworld's doing, and really this effort is largely happening at Jaw up in the UK today in Otley, and they got a great team up there. They got a great space. And they're really like passionate fans, building your games. And so, we've got a great relationship that's much more of the sort of green, sustainable model than it is the traditional publisher-developer yoke. In many ways, that makes Oddworld a micro-publisher. And what we're coming out next with is we're, repackaging the original Aid. We're redoing the original Aid, not as an HD, but in a full 3D engine technology. So. Cool. Part of this nostalgia, I call it nostalgialistic, is like neo-nostalgic sorry, I've been playing on the feet of words, neo-nostalgic. Part of this neo-nostalgic approach is that there was this great timeless thing about platform gaming. And just to comment and not draw it out, but one of the things that was great was you didn't have to navigate the full 3 dimensions. You were just paying attention more to left, right, up, down. There was a simpler relationship. And I felt like in that simpler relationship, there was kind of a way to deliver a little more of a sort of watching a story rather than, like being in that FPS mode where you really are in the story. It's more like you're watching the story. And so what we wanted to play around with the 3D technology was how do we retain that simple, not making you fully drive in the full, realm of axes for your motion, X, Y, and Z, as much as more of your intent is still driving it without the need for that precision. And doing that in this classical sort of way, but doing it in a way that starts maximizing the 3D possibility and starts like squeezing more, water out of the rock that is the emotional possibility.
Right on.
So keeping the same narrative and game design largely the same game design that took place in Abe's Odyssey, that's being repackaged on basically Unity technology, and they're turning that old style up to 11. And so far, I saw the results. It's looking cooler than I thought it would. And
that's awesome.
And the audience is really resonating now. So that's our first, that's one of our biggest investments.
Lorne, I once again, I have to give you a shout out for Stranger's Wrath, which is one of my favorite video games of all time. It came out in 2005, and Gears of War came out a year later, and was a launch title, obviously, for the Xbox 360. And one of the things that I love most, and I would like to see more Stranger's Wrath, so if you have a notepad handy, can you write that down? Make Stranger's Wrath 2 and 3. I have no money to give you, but just make it anyway, just for me. But if you look at Gears of War, nothing against Cliff or Epic or what they accomplished, and you look at Stranger's Wrath, one of the things I love about it is that it has a terrific third act. And I think a lot of times when developers are building games, they don't always think in terms of making the third act interesting for gamers because they don't really have faith that most gamers are going to make it there. Only the hardcore few are going to make it there. Now, if you look at the span of Gears of War, it's more of a one-note experience from beginning to end. Do you think having, deeper, richer character, even, Marcus Phoenix versus Stranger, it's no comparison. Stranger is obviously a much more nuanced, much more interesting, deeper, emotional, spiritual character. Do you think that hurts you guys? Do you think gamers maybe didn't necessarily respond or react to the fact that this character maybe was too complicated for a video game?
My feeling was I don't think that was the reason, and there's, obviously there's been some noise on this over the years, and I've said some things and other people have said some things, but, Stranger's Wrath didn't really get a shot, right? It didn't get any visibility. So, and that was whatever the conditions are at the time, and I don't want to drag that up, but he didn't have any advertising in a retail climate. And so you're pretty much sealing your fate. Any big game that is coming out, it's coming out because you've got the community following it. That's one way, and the other is they're spending tons and tons of money making sure that everyone knows it's coming out. And if you take that spend away, even your biggest sequels aren't going to perform nearly as well. And when you have something that's a new IP, which was what Stranger was, no one knew what Stranger was. So that was a new IP, and it just didn't have a shot. And I think the validation of that is really what occurred this Christmas on the Vita. And on the Vita, we took number one in the charts for Vita in the UK and Europe on PSN, and we also took number two in the States. And so the reception, the fan mail that we get, the ratings that we get, I think the possibility was there. I think the climate and the conditions sort of denied it, and then denied that possibility, and therefore the fate of it was sealed in that era. And then we can speculate on all the different reasons why that might have happened, but I think it was basically lack of exposure. And now maybe I could be wrong, However, getting to your first point, which I think is a great observation, is what about the third act? Right. And so if you're coming from film, it's like, if the third act isn't completely rocking it, then your film's deflating, right? And you're not going to get that applause when the curtain goes down. And so I always thought of these more like films, and that we should be what I would call sort of treating the story and the characters with the integrity of how a good filmmaker approaches their narrative, or a good novelist does. And so I do think that there's a lot of wisdom that says you don't have to pay that much attention to it today. And you point out some examples, and there's a lot of examples where it just kind of continues on, and then eventually there's an ending.
And there's a boss.
And it's not. There's a boss. Yeah.
Everything just goes slack.
Yeah.
Right. But if you look at it from a analytic sort of marketing development cost, investment cost structure, you are looking at it differently. And the way you're looking at it is statistically, how many people are playing, how many hours of the game, how deep are they going, what's the percentage of the audience that ultimately is getting to the end. And when you look at that, and having been involved with new hardware launches and, trying to really swing for the fence with marketing campaigns on AAA titles on console, having been there, I can tell you that, that is part of the science. And so if the project is getting crunched in any way, it's always the end that's going to suffer.
Right.
Right. And you'll have, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm identifying the pressure. It's kind of like being in a space capsule, right? There's this pressure. It's not evil, but if you're not paying attention to it, it kills you. And the pressure that says, look, 90% of the audience is only going to be playing for the first 1/10 of the game, and it's falling off after that, and only 5% is going to get to the end. My attitude was always, but that 5% that's going to get to the end is the most boisterous and the most passionate percent. And if you can satisfy them, then you're kind of getting back into that content is king model.
Well, and you're also getting them to tell all their friends that this game is worth playing. Exactly.
And that's, hence my point, right? Which is they're going to become your best advocates. And really that's, in Oddworld today, that's the huge lesson on a business level is empowering the people that are empowering you. Oftentimes Jaw comes to me with a question and I say, ask the audience. Because what I know, at one time, I would have been terrified, and I think I got to pre-package this thing perfectly. And if I don't, someone's going to shoot me with arrows. And I read something from Tim Schafer a week or so ago about his Kickstarter campaign, and I thought it was really poignant and dead on. And he said, stop being afraid of what you release. Just involve the audience more in your process. And this is one of his biggest lessons in the Kickstarter campaign, he's saying. And I totally identified with that, because normally you're trying to make things perfect. But the more you can engage the audience in the process and your fan base, and the more you're empowering them, that feedback is going to be really, really valuable.
That's
and
awesome.
if you listen to it, there's another sort of feedback loop that happens in a positively perpetuating way, making that relationship a little more superconductive, which is they see that you're listening.
Yeah.
And when they see that you're listening, they start feeling heard. Unlike any comment you're ever going to make on CSNBC or CNN's forums, you're not heard. There's not a voice anywhere. So that's part of our issue in life today is none of us feel heard. And if we can, as content makers, make our audience feel heard, and whether or not we agree with them, make them believe that we listened, which is authentic. And if it is authentic, I think that authenticity resonates, and that's how things have more timeless possibilities and deeper, more passionate fan bases.
Well, timeless is the operative word, man. I mean, I think you took a page right from Nintendo's playbook with creating worlds where every single character had weight and had sort of a backstory. You could tell just by looking at them or hearing them that there was something there. I think you may have created the only game where the actual ammunition also had character, which is really crazy. And and I think that is the reason why people are finding your stuff today and still having a great time with it. And there's an anticipation for these remakes. But why do you think more developers don't inject and don't think and don't put more sort of emphasis on fleshing? Like most characters in most modern video games are either to be saved or destroyed, and they're like so binary. You've created things with levels and layers, and why aren't other developers doing that?
I think there's probably a lot of different reasons. The one I would say is the one that's inescapable for me is I'm an artist, right? That's I'm not a businessman. I'm not a game designer. I'm an artist. And as an artist, I don't know really how to engage a project and feel passionate about it unless I believe in it on another level. It's like we're all here on Earth, right? And for X amount of however long we can stick it out and not get cancer and run over or whatever. But we have our window, and that window is a possibility for each of us. I mean, really, each of us.
Yeah.
And in that, what are we doing with every hour of our life, right? And I know that's kind of absurd and woo-wooey, but really it's kind of true. And so if we're going to invest years in our life, I mean, there's a lot of projects I haven't taken on that I just know are going to take years of my life, and I just don't feel the nutrients in them. I could feel some cash, I could feel some great relationships, I could feel some great learning curves, but I don't really feel like that's the best way I could have dedicated my energy for the things I care about in life. And as an artist, you're constantly trying to figure out how to integrate those things you care about in life in your medium of expression. And for me as an artist, I've just been trying to find mediums that can utilize the tools and the technologies that I love and the philosophies that I observe, and the realities I observe, and as a storyteller, how to repackage those into something viable where, gaming is kind of like potato chip time, right? Like if we were saying, where does gaming fit in the 4 basic food groups? It's kind of not there yet, right? For the most part, using a very loose analogy. But if we said, well, if it were, then how would we look at gaming time? So we'd say, well, as a food, it's in the junk food category because we're not really, necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of positive benefits to it. Ted Bryce has given some great talks in Washington about the benefits to it. I'm not trying to get into that or dismiss any of that, but really, we know it's not like you go to games because it's going to help you get your degree right away. Yeah. Right? It's not like they're going to help you get the job unless you're trying to be a game designer or something. But if that's where that space is at, what could that time and opportunity become? Like, let's say the government tomorrow said, you know what, we think games have a tremendous possibility for impact on our planet, but we think that the free market and the public company sort of model, the Wall Street model that requires growth or death for any big successes there, we think that's stifling the greater possibility of this meeting and what it could be giving back to our society. So what we're going to do is we're going to launch $1 billion fund effort, and we're going to ask those in the game community would like to teach kids physics by first grade, to teach kids to read by this time, to help engineers better understand, how the world works, and biologists and scientists to understand by creating virtual worlds that don't necessarily have to turn a profit, but have to show improvement in cognitive skills and statistic benefits to society. If that happened tomorrow, what would gaming be like in 10 years from now?
Yeah, right.
Right. And that's not even on the table, right? It's never up for discussion. It's not going to happen under the current way things work here. But we really are still looking at a medium that's just capable of completely kicking ass over all other mediums.
Yeah.
And when we look at that, and all we want to do is, just make money from it or survive or improve our craft, I can't ding anyone for those purposes, right? And I think most development companies are just trying to stay in business building games. And I think that's a very difficult and challenging reality to sustain. And so just by nature of building games, you're putting yourself in a pretty tough place to exist. And what that does is it forces you to be more risk averse with all the creative decisions that you're making, because the others seem more suicidal. I mean, if you look at Abe, right? I'm going out there telling people, no, man, my hero is going to be coming from like the apocalypse factory farm, right? Where everyone's going to be ground up, and he loves the animals, but then he's going to find out, he's going to go out and discover his people that have been completely genocided. It's going to be great, man. Let's invest in this. So it's kind of a hard story.
You got one of the biggest players to put money behind. It's amazing. It's incredible.
Lorne, listen, I know you're busy, and I know you got to get busy making Stranger's Wrath 2 and 3 for me. So we're going to let you go. And also, I think your car is double parked in front of the dumpster outside. So you're going to want to move that. And Vic's mom needs a ride to her reducing class.
If it's still there.
Yeah. So if you don't mind giving her a ride, that'd be great.
Hey, Lorne, though, what I want to do is I want to get you back. I think we're going to get some really good response on this podcast, and lots of people are going to have more questions and stuff. So if you don't mind coming back in a couple of weeks or a few weeks or something like that, we'd love to do it, man.
No,
lots to talk to you about still.
I'll wear the hazmat suit next time.
I'd bring 2 hustlers, one for Vic and one for me. We don't share our hustler.
Yep. Thanks for giving my mom a ride, buddy.
Thanks, you guys. Hey, thanks for all the support over the years. It really means a lot to us. Thank you.
You rock, buddy. That was Lorne Lanning. That was Lorne effing Lanning.
I never have met him before.
No?
No, I'd never met Lorne. I've only seen video images of him and heard his voice before. So to meet him in person...
We should have got him to do Abe. I can't believe we didn't do that.
It's
We're so stupid.
Yeah. You do, Abe. You do all the voices.
I can't do it.
Terrible.
Let me out of here.
That's enough of that. You're just
My name's Abe.
You're diminishing what this man has created, and
Sorry, Lorne.
He really is. He really is a visionary. I mean, I think he's a little nuts, and I think you have to be a little nuts to stick around. He does. He's aware of his nutsiness.
Well, he knows he's unique. He knows he's got a unique. I mean, look at his games. I mean, they're works of art. They were works of art when the video game industry was like, how do we move a thing in 3D? I want to stab that guy.
Why did he have to die?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like he's telling a story about consumption and consumerism and that we're eating ourselves. And, like the video game industry.
Nobody gives a shit.
Is like not ready for this guy.
Does this have a cover mechanic? Because that's really all we fucking care about.
Well, how come this guy's got a neck? There's no necks in video games.
Give him a fucking bandana and a cover mechanic and no neck, and we are good to fucking go. Roll out.
I know he's Marines. Such an anomaly, and that's why we love him, and that's why he's important.
But he was right there on the change too. He was right there when we went from regular old weird human games to crazy shooters. He got left behind. He was the cast-off husk in the video game industry.
And he knows it. It's like every time he came out with something...
I would be so fucking bitter if I was him. He's not.
But, what's cool is that the world caught up to him, And now all of these guys, the Jonathan Blows, the Clay Entertainments, everybody is out there making these wicked 2D experiences. And I'm sure they all tip their hat to the awesome, Oddworld games that they played that inspired them. And that, I would love for us to be able to afford one more microphone and have like a few people, 1 or 2 more microphones, and have like a little roundtable type discussion, because that would be really cool to bring in some of the new guard, like some, maybe the designer of Mark of the Ninja again, and we've got Lorne Lanning on the line or something like that.
I thought you wanted to use the extra microphone to record our farts.
We have to get butt
which are
microphones.
very musical.
We have to get butt microphones. Where do you get those? Is there a section for those?
Musical farts on the next. Yeah, you can buy those. I think at what's the B&H photo?
B&H.
In
Yeah,
New York.
They sell butt mics.
Fart microphones. Just so I can make it creepy here at the end of the show, I'm going to eat a banana. So here I am. I'm going to eat a banana on the show. First time ever.
Wow. That's banana eating music right there.
Stitcher.
All right. Listen, you can sign up for our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, as Scott just pointed out with his mouthful of banana. And we love hearing from you. So if you've got a comment or a question or whatever, listen, if you want to have us ask Lorne some more questions when we have him on that you want to know about, let us know.
Or recommend somebody else that you want to hear.
Yeah, anybody else that you'd like on the podcast. Anybody.
A different fruit
anybody. We probably can't get that person, but if you want to recommend it, you go right ahead.
How about a pomegranate? I'll eat a pomegranate next week on the show.
If you want to recommend some fruit, we can make that happen. We're here for you.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening.